I'm Al. He's Brian. This is the 49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast, part of the Odyssey Network. I am drinking, Brian, a Captain's Daughter double IPA from Gray Sale Brewery.
Nice.
I'm pretty excited about it. It tastes pretty good. I'm going to drink that during the show and talk some Niners with you. And here's what I have on my mind right now. It's the off season, and during the off season, the wheels get turning, and I find stuff to worry about. How I am with this sort of thing. But I'm just kind of looking at the Niners in general, and just when I look at this team, I try to take off the fan hat. I just try to look at things as I'm trying to cover it. What if this was the Titans? If this was whoever, it's another random team, the Commanders? How would I kind of look at this? And I think where I see with the Niners is my biggest worry for them in wondering if they can make another Super Bowl appearance, if that's realistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's regression and it's law of averages. So let's start with the law of averages, I guess. This team has made 4 NFC championships in 5 years and 2 Super Bowls in 5 years. Mm-hmm. They have done that without an elite quarterback. And I think Brock Purdy is very good. He's only been there for the last year and a half.
Right.
But when I say elite, I mean Pat Mahomes. I mean Tom Brady.
Right.
That level quarterback. And not only have the Niners done that since 2019, they did it in 2011, 2013 without an elite quarterback. So to have those kind of runs twice without having that elite QB play is really, really, really hard to do. And it's really hard to sustain. Now, Purdy can maybe take that next jump. I don't think he's ever going to be in the Mahomes situation, but
no.
Can he be a top 5 guy? Maybe. If he's Drew Brees light, maybe. And that can carry you. But I just think when I'm thinking about the Niners and, they have good odds to go to the Super Bowl, and every national person I've seen has been like, no, Niners are the team to beat, and sure. But I guess for me, the worry is law of averages. Does the ball just start to bounce the other way? At some point it has to, right? And that's why I think last year that was their chance, because now are we putting too much on this team to say again, well, yeah, they got to make the Super Bowl? Because it's been 60 games in 3 years. Is that unrealistic expectation, do you think, or am I nuts?
I mean, I don't think it's unrealistic expectations. You look at some of these teams that, have been consistently at the top of the NFL, if you will, for long stretches. And like you said, the one thing that they tend to have in common is either A, an elite quarterback, or B, an elite head coach, or C, a combo of the two, right? And you look at the Patriots, you look at the Chiefs, you look at teams like that. Now, granted, those are teams that brought it home. Those are teams that won the Super Bowl. But the 49ers are in a unique position because they do have an elite head coach. And that head coach is their offensive play caller. And to me, it feels like as long as the 49ers have Kyle Shanahan as their head coach and their offensive play caller, they will have to be considered one of the favorites in the NFC. Now, again, do I think they're a favorite to win the Super Bowl? No, I don't think they should be a favorite to win the Super Bowl. But the other thing you have to look at is the conference that they come from and the teams that are in that conference, and whether or not from last year to the coming year, those teams have made big enough leaps to say, yeah, they are better than the San Francisco 49ers. And honestly, I don't think that they have. I still think that the bulk of the talented teams in the NFL still exist in the AFC. What I think is interesting is since the league moved to 14 teams making the playoffs, right? So 7 teams from each conference. Every year that has happened, there has been 6 new teams from the previous season that have made it to the playoffs over the teams from the previous season, right? And that's a lot out of the 14. And I was listening to Extra Point Taken with Shil Kapadia and Ben Solak recently, and that was one of Shil Kapadia's points was, with that in mind, that since we've expanded the playoffs, 6 new teams each year have been in the playoffs. You start to think about, all right, well, who are those 6 new teams? And when you look at the NFC, I don't really feel like there's a whole lot of like the teams that didn't make it in the NFC last season that will make it in the upcoming season. Really, to me, you look at maybe the NFC South, and maybe with Raheem Morris and Kirk Cousins, the Falcons win that division over the Bucks. But the Saints aren't winning that division. The Panthers aren't winning that division.
No.
Maybe the Bucks. Maybe so. It's between the Bucks and the Falcons.
If the Falcons don't win that division, that's a huge upset, I think.
Sure.
I would say at this point.
Yeah. And then you look at the NFC East and you go, Dallas is still going to be Dallas. They're still going to be good. They're likely going to make it out of there. I don't think the Giants are going to do anything. The Eagles, right? They definitely will. And then not definitely, but as you look at it now, right? And then the
Commanders could surprise some people. I think they could surprise some people this year.
They could. They absolutely could. But again, you're talking about a rookie quarterback trying to lead a team to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the NFC North. To me, that's the one where I think 3 teams make it out of the NFC North, and that's the Lions and the Packers, who are the class of that division. I think the Bears, even with a rookie quarterback, the Bears are pretty loaded on offense.
They came on last year too,
and their defense.
Last year.
Yeah, they're largely because their defense started performing up to a level that was acceptable. And so I look at it and I go, who is threatening the 49ers? And then you say, well, the Packers and the Lions gave the 49ers everything that they could handle.
All they could handle.
The playoffs.
And they are up and coming teams.
And I agree with that. But do I also think that those teams got better this offseason? I'm not sure. Maybe the Lions did. The Lions might have done enough on defense to bridge the gap. Maybe they are the team that threatens the 49ers. But to me, again, I don't think it's unrealistic to think the 49ers have, I would say, the inside track to be the NFC representative, because the 49ers, with all the moves that happened, right, they still, in my opinion, they did not get worse. And I think on offense, if we're reading the tea leaves right, and we've got Brock Purdy, who is likely to take another step as a quarterback, has an offseason where he's fully healthy for the full offseason, going through the full offseason program. They're adding talent on that side of the ball. And then in Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing, right? These are rookies, but still adding talent. It seems like the line, you would think. Guerendo, the line is largely the same, but they brought guys in to compete. Maybe Dominic Pooney, pushes for a spot, and maybe that spot ends up being right guard, and perhaps, Feliciano has played center. I don't know how that's all going to shake out, but at the very least, this team hasn't gotten worse. And if they haven't gotten worse, and the only team that we could point to that maybe is better is the Lions, and then you could argue the Eagles, right? And the Eagles are better just by the fact that they brought in Vic Fangio to run that defense, who's obviously going to be a better defensive coordinator than who they had last year, which at the end was Matt Patricia. Yeah. They fixed their secondary.
Theoretically, on paper.
Theoretically, their linebackers still suck. But that might be, you might be able to kind of hide that with Vic Fangio. So yeah, I do think it's realistic. But the other thing you got to realize is the last team to make it back to a Super Bowl after losing was the Tom Brady led Patriots. So it's not a common thing. There is, for whatever reason, those Super Bowl losers, that following year tend to, I think it's just, I think we see it with our fan base, if I'm being perfectly honest. I have seen on Twitter the number of people, and again, that's a small section or whatever, but the number of people that talk about, like, after that last loss, like, I've been
took a lot out of people.
Yeah, it took a lot out of people. And if it took a lot out of us as fans, you got to imagine what it did to the players, right? Who put their literal heart and soul and body into this game, week in and week out. So I do think that there is a danger, but without games being played and you're just looking on paper, I definitely think this team is still a Super Bowl contender. I don't think
And
that they should be thought of as favorites to win the Super Bowl, which there are some places that have those odds. I've seen at least one place had the 49ers as the odds on favorite. But I definitely think that at the very least, they are easily a playoff team. And then from there, once you
easily
get
a
in,
playoff team.
it's
Right.
it's I don't want to say luck of the draw, but anything can happen once you get in.
They're so talented. I mean, there's 10 wins right there. I think just out of your talent, if everybody stays healthy. But I guess so. You brought up the point of on paper they look the same, and that's what I've been hearing too everywhere. Like, especially from national people tend to hate on the Niners. I feel like sometimes, and a lot of it's been like, well, they're bringing everybody back. They're the same team. They're the favorites, and I'm looking at it as well, yeah, they are, but does regression kick in? Do the last 3 years start to kick in those 60 games? And I look at a team, Niners own Dallas. I'm not worried about Dallas until Dallas shows me they can actually beat them. I'm not worried about them at all. They're super talented, but they're a good example of it. Yeah, right. 45 years old. Like, they're a good example of a team that has all this talent but can't get it done in the playoffs, which is why I keep saying the Niners are the special group, because this group can get it done in the playoffs. Philly, I'm not going to worry about again until I see them be able to beat the 49ers. I don't want to talk NFC Championship game. They didn't have their quarterback 2 years ago, so I don't want to hear about that game. That game was bullshit. When the Niners played them last year, the Niners blew the doors off of them. So until those two teams can show me, I'm not worried about those two teams. 3 teams I worry about. The Lions. Because the Lions should have won that game 5 times over. If a lot of the reason was Campbell did some stupid shit. Was it? I forget, the receiver dropped a couple passes. Should have won that game.
Josh Reynolds.
Josh Reynolds, yeah. A couple passes he brings in, and the Lions probably do win. Packers gave the Niners everything they could handle. The common theme with those two teams are ascending. Young players, getting better. You would
run
think,
the ball.
if they continue that way. They run the football, which I think is going to be the Niners' weakness. That's what worries me about those two teams, because as those teams are ascending, the 49ers are coming back. And I'll tell you the third team in a minute, but the Niners are coming back with the same people, but Trent Williams is 36. Kyle Juszczyk is 33. Jake Brendel's 32. John Feliciano's 32. Leonard Floyd is 32. Devondre Campbell's 31. Yep. Hargrave 31. Kittle 31. He'll be playing 31 this season. So again, at some point, that is going to catch up with you. Maybe it won't catch up this year, but the regression is coming. Winter is coming, right? Like, it's coming. Yes. So at some point, as these seasons get longer, and now you're going into, all right, well, you're going into this postseason, and now you're pushing 80 games in the last 4 years. McCaffrey's had 798 touches the last 2 years total. Do these younger teams start to leapfrog you? That's why last year was such a kick in the balls. The third team I'm worried about, and some people may poo-poo this, the Rams. Because if you look at the way the Rams are building their team, if Stafford is healthy, because Stafford's an older quarterback, but they're building up their lines, and they are going to be monsters at running the football with Williams and Blake Corum. And then you got Puka, and you got Kupp still there. And they're building their defense back up. You would think that team worries me. And I know the Niners have owned them in the regular season. I would trade in all those regular season wins if they had beat them in the NFC Championship game a few years back, which you know what I mean? So I get that. I get that he owns that. But the way that they're building that team, and again, if you're in December, January, a team that runs the ball, a team that's physical like that team worries me too. So I see these teams that I think are kind of like, oh, they're on the rise. And I think the Niners are stagnant, which is fine, because, I mean, they were terrific last year. So if you're stagnant being a Super Bowl team, God bless you. Great. It's fine. But stagnant with the idea of, if Purdy doesn't take that next step, or even if he's just got to kind of stay the same, right? I'd like to see him get a little, he's probably got to get a little bit better if you're talking elite QB that can carry a team. He's got to get a little bit better. I think Ayuk is ascending. And other than that, what are we doing, bro? Kittle's 31. Again, Kittle's awesome. He's 31. We just said the offensive line, 3 of them are 32 years or older, and one of them's Colton McKivitz. The other one's Colton McKivitz, right? Banks didn't have a great year last year. McCaffrey, all-world offensive player of the year, but he's got 798 touches the last 2 years. What does history tell us? History tells us he's going to fall off a cliff at 28, 29 years old. I hope it doesn't happen, but there's going to be some regression there. Deebo Samuel is banged up. It looked like he regressed a little bit at times last year.
Yeah.
So right now, the only two players I look at the Niners offense that I'm like arrow pointing up are Ayuk and Purdy.
Sure.
Because I don't know what Ricky Pearsall is. We don't know about the rookies. So the guys on the team
Yeah.
that we've seen arrow pointing up are those two guys. So that's on offense. Defensively, sorry, I'm ranting here a little bit, but
No, I like it.
the cornerbacks, I love what they did in that corner. You got Ward is a stud, Lenore is a stud, 28 and 26. Yadam's coming in. You had a really good year with the Saints last year, and you take the second rounder in Green. You assume they're really good there, right? Nick Bosa is Nick Bosa. Fred Warner is Fred Warner. Other than that, here's where I'm worried. Safety position. Jair Brown, okay, he had an okay rookie season. Are we going to crown him a starter at this point? Mustafa's a rookie, you don't know. Hufunga is coming off he wasn't fast anyway, and he's coming off an ACL injury. No idea what's happening at safety. The second linebacker position, you do not replace Jerry Greenlaw. He's a top 10 linebacker in the NFL.
Right.
So we saw in the Super Bowl when he was out, there's going to be a gigantic drop off. I don't give a shit who you put there if he's not ready. And then the defensive line, which everybody always says, oh, it's the Niners, we're fine. Bosa's great. Other than that, Leonard Floyd is a really good player, and he has really good statistics, but he's not a guy who dominates consistently during a game. It's like a game and a half will go by, and you're like, oh, look, Floyd got a sack. And then you don't see him for like 3 quarters. You're like, oh, hey, Floyd. He's not somebody that you constantly gets pressure, but he's better than what they had.
Yeah.
Gross Matos, nobody knew who. Okay, maybe some people liked him coming in the draft. Nobody paid any attention in the last 3 years. Nobody knows, you don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
Jordan Elliott is a replacement level guy at defensive tackle. And despite, I'm sorry that people saw a stat that said he had a good run stop percentage or some shit. He was ranked like 120th at PFF for a defensive tackle. He was all over the place in the run game. Go read about him from the Browns. Like he's just a replacement level type dude. Malik Collins, I like the pickup, but he's not Eric Armstead. Javon Hargrave is a 31-year-old player who's a better pass rusher than he is a run defender, and I thought he was part of the regression. I worry about that too. So on the defensive side of the ball too, I see holes. I see a team that you could run on. I see a team that if Greenlaw's not there, you could probably throw on them over the middle. Like so what the Chiefs did when they went all over Oren Burks. No, he's not there anymore, but still, like they got to find another linebacker there. So I just see this team where, yeah, if you're coming back, everything looks good, but I just see that possibility of regression. And as they start to regress even a little and these other teams shoot up, that's where my worry is with that. So I don't know. I just see holes in this team that maybe other people don't right now.
No, I definitely think that there are what I would call them are potential holes, right? Because a lot of this is, again, also just conjecture or projection about whether they'll be, whether they will regress or whether they will not. You know, how does that revamped defensive line, you know, how does that look versus the defensive lines that we're used to seeing since Shanahan and Lynch have been here? And I will agree that on paper, this defensive line is the least talented defensive line they have had since 2019, right? Not 2019, 2018, right? Because 2019, you
awesome.
had you had Armstead and Buckner and
D Ford,
and Nick Bosa. The one thing I'll say about Leonard Floyd is I haven't seen Leonard Floyd play with a defensive end opposite him as talented as Nick Bosa in quite a while. I think Leonard Floyd has been kind of counted upon in his previous stops as the premier pass rusher. And the fact that he won't be counted on that here in San Francisco might be a benefit to him because everybody is always going to focus and slide their protection towards Nick Bosa. He's Nick Bosa, right? That just makes sense. So, you know, I think there's an opportunity for Leonard Floyd to even be more productive sacking the quarterback than he has been. I'm excited about that signing, but again, like you said, it is 1 year and they did not address the position in the draft. And so we really don't know what that looks like. Yetur Gross-Matos, I think is they view him in the mold of Charles Omenihu, right? Like inside outside versatility, a big end,
right?
And you know, on
untapped potential.
Yeah, exactly. Get him in with Chris Kasurek and see if you can, you know, profit. At linebacker, you're right. You cannot replace Dre Greenlaw. One thing that I think is interesting is the number of bodies that they brought in in the secondary, both as free agents and also in the draft. Right? They've brought in Yadam, they've brought in Rocky Sin, they've brought in Renardo Green. They drafted Malik Mustafa, right? That's four new faces in the secondary to go along with Diamador Lenore, Travarius Ward, Talanoa Hufanga, Jair Brown. I mean, technically, you probably have to count George Odom, even though he's largely just going to be a special teams ace.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, if you know that you have just rare abilities in coverage with Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw on the field, do we see more dime looks, right, where it's just Fred Warner at linebacker? And so in order to increase your ability to cover, maybe you're going to go dime and see more 3 safety sets and things like that to replace a Dre Greenlaw with a player who can cover better than any other linebacker could do so. Because again, Greenlaw has exceptional coverage skills for a linebacker. That was also Tatum Bethune-'s game at Florida State, though. So again, a player that I think, to keep an eye on. D Winters and Jalen Graham. I think Jalen Graham is probably not going to be on this roster. D Winters, maybe. Devondre Campbell, again, a flyer just on a veteran presence in that, in that linebacking group. But his best days are behind him. But at the same time, maybe he flourishes in San Francisco with, he was not a fan of Joe Barry, his defensive coordinator in Green Bay. The last 2 seasons felt like he was misused. Maybe we see something, who knows, right? Just a flyer. Yeah, just a flyer. But I think the age regression, I think is scariest to think about on the offensive side, right? You named, when you look at the starting 11 for this team, right? And if you include Kyle Juszczyk in that starting 11, like you said, Williams is 36, Banks is, in his mid to late 20s, Brendel's in his 30s,
32.
Feliciano's in his 30s, Colton McKivitz is in his late 20s. Ayuk is 26, right? But then Debo is 28, right? Like the age, I think, shows itself more on the offensive side than it does the defensive side. Where it shows on the defensive side is on the defensive line. With just Leonard Floyd really kind of brings that average up. But it's like we said, it's all projection. And I agree with you. Like there is definitely cause for concern. They are probably, when you look at teams that you could say are Super Bowl contenders, I would be interested to see if you look at the starting 22, or at least the projected starting 22 of the top Super Bowl contenders, the 49ers are probably going to be one of, if not the oldest teams in their starting 22. And that is
the third oldest team in the NFL last year. And I don't think I'm not sure they're younger this year.
They didn't get much younger, if at all.
No. Yeah. So,
and so, it is cause for concern, but you also, it's hard to discount this group. Like you said, it is a special group. It really is. And there's really nothing to quantify there. Like you can't just,
there's not,
you can't, it is an intangible, right? It's part of why people struggle to think Brock Purdy is good, right? Because a lot of what makes Brock Purdy good is his intangibles, right? His leadership and his, his moxie and all, that's hard to quantify, but I would be hard pressed to count this team out with the players that are currently on this squad, unless they start to get injured. And that's, to me, that's the bigger fear, right? Because you look at that loss after 2019 and then you go, all right, well, what was the 2020 season like? It was a goddamn nightmare when it came to injuries and, injuries to key players, injuries to Nick Bosa, injuries to Jimmy Garoppolo, injuries, right? So that is really what derailed that season, outside of obviously COVID. And then they had to, change their home for, like, it was just a nightmare season. But then the following season, they come back and they make it to the NFC Championship game. And the following season, same thing. And then the following season, they make it to the Super Bowl. So as much as all of these games add up to these players, they've shown time and time again that they're willing to or they're capable of meeting the call. And what I would say is, until we start to see some situations where age, you can tell, is starting to affect some of these players or the amount of games that they've played, I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt. But that doesn't mean that, again, you can't be concerned, or you can't be, you can't talk about, is this team capable of making one more run? And I think they are. And I think, I'm not going to say that you think they're not, but you definitely, I think, have more concern than I do. But I appreciate that, because sometimes I can be a little too rose-colored glasses, if you will, or red.
Well,
and gold glasses.
I think for me, and it's sometimes it's tough to make this point because you're like, this doesn't happen often. And then I just gave an example how the Niners have done it twice in the last 10 years with two different groups.
Mhm.
But to have special players like this who can make a run like this without a Mahomes or Montana, it typically does not happen
Mhm.
often, or a Brady or whoever. And if you look at since 2010, okay, the Chiefs and the Patriots have 16 playoff wins, and they've won 3 Super Bowls. The Niners have 13. They've won no Super Bowls. The
Right.
Packers have 12. They won a Super Bowl. Seahawks 10. They won a Super Bowl. Ravens 9. They won a Super Bowl. So these teams that have won a lot of playoff games, only the Niners haven't won a Super Bowl, which is a huge kick in the nuts. But
Yes,
that doesn't mean that the runs haven't. They're basically 2 plays in the Super Bowl away from 2 Super Bowl championships.
right.
And you look at the NFC Championship game, they might be 5 plays away from 4 Super Bowl championships or whatever it is. It's a special group regardless. I'll give you an example. I always use the Yankees, but this is a Niners podcast. I'll use the Giants, even though I don't pay any attention to the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah.
When you look at Brandon Crawford, if you look at the back of his baseball card, does that impress you?
No, it does not.
But was he a winning player?
He was, absolutely.
If you look at Buster Posey, he's had some great years for a catcher.
Mhm.
But if you look at the back of his baseball card, are you like, whoa, dude hit 35, 40? No.
Right. No.
But was he a special player?
Yeah.
Right? Did those guys get it done at special time? And
Yeah.
that's where I am with this Armstead thing. I don't know how many people have said to me on social media, well, they replaced him with Collins and Jordan Elliott.
No,
You
replace
don't
him.
replace him. And here's the thing with that too. What Allie's been hurt. Yeah, okay. He does get hurt. He only had 1 year with 10 sacks. Okay. Have you watched him in the postseason? He has 8 sacks in the postseason. Did you watch him in the Super Bowl? I don't know what his stats were in the Super Bowl, but if you watched that game, he fucking dominated that game.
Mhm.
You don't replace a guy like that. You just a special person who, when the lights are brightest, he's like, you know what? In January, this dude's, if we got to play 3-4 games, he's coming to play more often than not. And as these guys get older, you just don't replace them. For Debo, for all the frustrations people have with Debo sometimes, and he didn't have a good Super Bowl, but how many big moments has he had? How many plays has he put the team on his back? Some of these guys are just special dudes. Just even somebody like fucking Jordan Willis who blocks a punt in a game, right? You just have those guys who absolutely just make these plays and have done these things in the postseason that are special. You don't replace that. And again, look at the Cowboys as an example. Do the Cowboys not have a shit ton of talent? They're loaded with talent. But when it comes to time in January, they don't step up for whatever reason. They don't have that inside them. You need that special, whatever the fuck it is, to be able to win in January if you don't have the elite QB, right?
Yeah.
And the more Armstead you move away from, the more Kittles who get older, as these things happen, it's not the same. And that's kind of my thing. Like, everybody's like, yeah, I thought they're going to be a good team. The Niners are talented. But are they still going to have that special core,
that edge, if you will?
Right. Yeah. Whatever it is that allows you to win in those big moments, those role players that just in the run in what was it, 2021, where you just had guys like Menahue and just again, people who aren't like huge, but in the playoffs it was like waves of guys just coming at you. It just depends. So that's when it can't happen, but the odds of it happening are slim. And I just feel like everybody's kind of in this mind, not everybody, but there's some people just kind of in this mindset where it's like, oh yeah, they just replaced it. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. They most likely did not. So it's
Yeah, and when you say they replace him, what you're saying is, on paper, the production that he provided over the last 2 seasons, they have replaced with players with similar production, right? That's where Malik Collins had very similar production to
Right.
Eric Armstead, right? When it comes to sacks and all of that. You're right on paper, but on paper also doesn't take into account, like you said, the intangibles, the leadership that
The
Eric
locker room.
Armstead
Sure.
provided.
Yep.
I mean, you look at you just think about that video that the 49ers put out last year when Steve Wilkes announced to the defensive line room that Eric Armstead was the 49ers nominee for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. And I remember in that video, they showed a video right to the room for Eric Armstead. And one of the guys in the video was Randy Gregory, who talked about how important Eric Armstead has been for him. Randy Gregory had been on that team for like 5 weeks. And he's talking about how important Eric Armstead has been to him just in those 5 weeks. And I know sometimes that can feel, I don't know, less than sincere, but you watch it and it doesn't feel insincere in the slightest. And so, you know, that's the kind of thing where it's like, sure, on paper, just production wise, you might be able to replace Eric Armstead. But when it comes to the overall impact he has on your team, you cannot replace that. You can't. Somebody else is going to have to step up and take that role. And I'll be perfectly honest. Who's it going to be? Fred Warner's already in a role. Fred Warner can't do more, right? Nick Bosa is a leader, but he's a quiet leader. I don't think we can expect that of someone like Nick Bosa, right? I just don't know how you replace that on the defensive side of the ball. And so that is a concern in and of itself. But roster talent wise, yeah, this team is definitely still capable of making a Super Bowl run. The question is all the intangibles, everything that comes along with making Super Bowl runs, injury luck in general, right? All of that
the way
stuff.
The ball bounces, yeah.
The way the ball bounces, all of that stuff. It's all unknown until game one, right? And so, you know, like I said, I have confidence in this team largely because I have confidence in Kyle Shanahan for all his warts, for all that, you know, all of the things that can be a detriment to the team. Again, I think as long as he is the head coach and as long as he's the offensive play caller, this team definitely has a shot at making it to a Super Bowl. But I don't know. I don't know if getting rid of Steve Wilkes and bringing in Sorensen as the play caller, but largely bringing in Brandon Staley as kind of a defensive philosophy shift a little bit. I don't know if that kind of stuff is going to be enough. But it'll be interesting to see. That's for sure.
One other thing that I hang my hat on is Brock Purdy, in the sense that we watched him in 2 playoff games, one where he didn't play well for 57 minutes or whatever it was, 3.5 quarters. And then it was like last drive. Okay. I don't even know what happened. It doesn't matter what happened last 3.5 quarters. I'm going to drive us down the field. And if I could use my legs to do it, that's how I'll win.
Yep.
And then in the NFC Championship game, just an absolute nightmare first half. Nightmare. What could have went wrong. And it was like, came out in the second half, like, all right, new game, let's go. You know what I mean? And again, same thing, just if I got to use my legs, however I have to win. So that at the quarterback position, that is reassuring to me for sure, because he just showed such moxie. And again, this is a second-year dude, right? And again, we've seen these Kirk Cousins, for whatever reason, doesn't get done in the playoff. Dak Prescott, for whatever reason, these good quarterbacks, whatever reason, can't win playoff games. And there's one behind center here who's won 4 of them at a very young age and doing things, whether it's been his best or not, to find ways to win those games. So that's reassuring. As we talk about special players who just find a way, if you have one behind center, there's no other better place to have it. So, you're not Brady, he's not Mahomes, but that doesn't mean he can't be clutch when he needs to be. You know, we saw Eli Manning, right?
Yeah.
When he needed to be, you make plays. That's all you have to do is. So that's reassuring to me. But listen, again, it's not a negative thing. It's just a kind of reality. It's just it might not happen. They could come out and look the same. We could have another year. These guys can, defy age and defy odds a little bit. Say, hey, we got another year, we got another run in us. We got a year left in us. That can absolutely happen. But at some point, we're going to move on from the special group. At some point, it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to keep getting special players, unless you have Hall of Fame quarter, like, you go Montana to Young or something like that. It's tough to do. So that's all it is. But we'll see.
We'll see.
That's the best you can say right now is we'll see. But that's, listen, we have a show. We have to talk about this stuff. And
that's right.
For until people actually get on the field in the next few months. But look, it's a good organization. They deserve the benefit of the doubt. They have misses, but they've had a ton of hits. They've built one of the best rosters in football. So odds are they're going to continue to be a competitive team. I don't see this team falling off the cliff anytime soon or anything like that.
No.
But the expectation of a Super Bowl every single year, with the window could be getting, a little bit tighter on that. But
and I would argue that largely whether they are or aren't does hinge on number 13. And I'm excited to see him in a second full year, but with an actual full off season of being able to work on his game, being able to, he looks, from the photos we've seen, he looks like he's put on some muscle. He looks bigger. It looks like he's been doing everything that he needs to. So this team is going to go as far as 13 can take them. And if he looks as good as he did last year, or he takes another step, then the team is in good hands, and this season will be exciting.
And we got the schedule release next week, right? Isn't that supposed to be next Wednesday or something like that? So we'll look. So that's always fun. Anytime you give us something to talk about in May, I'm excited about that. So
absolutely,
we'll go over the schedule and see what that looks like. And I love the schedule because, dude, my Sundays revolve around this shit. I mean, we have a job doing this, right? So like, my Sundays, I want to know what games are on, when, what I'm going to do when the Niners are on. So I can't wait for the schedule. I always look forward to that. All right. Fun. Check out in the description if you're watching on YouTube, Homage. If you're looking for Niners gear, I put the link in the description for Homage. Click on that. Pick up some t-shirts. They got some really cool stuff. Download us wherever you get your podcasts. And also check us out on YouTube. Again, all our shows are on YouTube now and other cool stuff from 49ers website. So subscribe, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. For Brian, I'm Al.
Later.